African entrepreneurs are absolutely changing the game. Through sheer grit, audacity, tenacity, and a whole lot of spirit, they're slowly changing the way we move, share, and trade. Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to Spotlight by Bertha Tobias, where we tell the raw and honest stories of the bravest doers and dreamers of our time. We laugh at our blunders and we take hopeful stock of the future of youth entrepreneurship in Namibia, Africa, and beyond. Today in studio, I am joined by David Akinin, who is the founder of Jabu. David, thank you so much for joining us in studio today.
Thanks. This is an awesome place. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So we'll get right into it. So Jabu's mandate is to reinvent the way retailers in the informal sector order and stock suppliers for their shops, right?
100%. There
Awesome.
are thousands of little stores in what we call the township economy that have no way of sourcing products, not even digital, but physical. And we're trying to disrupt that.
Yeah. So tell us about Jabu's origin story. Tell us about how long you've been evaluating logistical supply chain issues in Southern Africa, in Namibia. Tell us exactly what it is, because many people say, oh, I've seen it. I saw it at FNCC, but nobody really understands what's going on.
Cool. So
Yeah.
I came to Namibia about 10 years ago, and I started a construction company, which is all about logistics. Whoever works in construction, which is a lot of people in this country, can tell you that how you find people, how you move them around between projects, how you find materials, and how you actually just host those materials to get a construction project done is what actually determines whether you can succeed on time and on budget. So I've been in logistics for quite a while, even if I didn't want to. But about 4 years ago, right before the pandemic started, we started getting more traction with small entrepreneurs in communities where we were building, asking us, can you bring us products? And I think the real origin of our story comes from a lady that came up to me and said, her name is Inge Shatona Shekupe. She was building a house in Oshifo in Ruacana. And she came up to me with 2,000 Namibian dollars and said, hey, I want to buy 20 bags of cement from you. It was about 100 Namibian bucks a piece. And I was a bit surprised because she sold onions outside my office. She had a little shop, sold onions and a few creams and cosmetics. 2,000 is a lot. Her onions went from 1 to 3 Namibian dollars, depending on the size. So I said, where'd you get this money? Like, it's a lot of money. She said, I've been saving for 6 months so that I can approach you to buy cement. So, well, look, I don't sell cement, but I'd be happy to sell you the cement. Where do you want it? Like, what do you want this cement for? When I came to her plot, in Oshifo, Ruacana, this is 12 hours from the capital, I found that she had made by hand 30,000 cement bricks. And I was shocked. I was actually angry because my brother and I had bought a brick-making factory. We had set it up in the town, and she didn't buy those bricks from us. So she said that she made them herself. And then I went from angry to surprised. I've never heard of anyone making bricks themselves, and much less this quantity. Turns out that this is a successful entrepreneur who we underestimate, who's been making 1,000 to 2,000 Namibian dollars a month, which is a very small amount, but if you save it up for a long period of time, you're able to accomplish your dreams. And that's when we realized if we can get into the logistics space, if we can actually source and supply for these small shops and help them become sustainable, we'll be able to build more housing than if we actually build the housing ourselves. And that's the beginning of Jabu.
Yeah, awesome. And I know that there's currently something like 6,000 merchants on the Jabu platform. And I'm wondering, and I know you also operate in Zambia, I think, and across soon in different markets as well. What's the biggest challenge of operating in different markets?
So we have about 20,000 merchants now amongst our markets.
wow.
We are working in South Africa, Zambia, and Namibia. In Namibia, we're in 7 or 8 cities right now. Think of us, and I think I didn't get a chance yet to say it, but
Yeah.
we have an app. We also have a call center. If you're a small merchant, you go on our app and you buy all the products you need for your shop, and we get them delivered to you.
Okay.
One of our biggest challenges, as you can think, is in the logistics of it. How do we get to these places? How do we identify them? Some of the places in the informal sector don't even have roads, don't have addresses. And another big challenge, I would say, is money. We collect cash and coins. And we take security measures to make sure that this is safe and do it properly, but reconciling that money is actually quite burdensome. So I think the future of Jabu right now is in 2 things. We're launching Jabu Connect. We acquired Taxi Connect, which is a Namibian startup from Reynold last year. Reynold's joined our team, so it's not, we've actually partnered with him to go build Jabu Connect. And Jabu Connect is pretty much an app that will allow anyone who is selling to customers to order a truck. So instead of just ordering a taxi, now you can order a truck and have it delivered to your customers. Jabu is the first customer of Jabu Connect because we are delivering to hundreds of shops in any city, and we need trucks to be available.
Okay.
And Jabu Wallet is the second thing we're launching. We've just gotten our license in Zambia, and we are getting our license here. We're working with the central bank very closely to actually help people not only digitize their money, which is one of our biggest concerns when we sell to a small shop, but to save money. We're launching a savings product that will allow people to earn interest by putting money on the wallet.
Okay. So who is the average, and I'm glad you're bringing it up, because who is the average user for Jabu? So when you say, for instance, you are helping somebody if they have a shop, is it everybody who has a shop? Is it big retailers? Is it small kuka shop owners?
So it's a great distinction to say who versus the average, because who can be anyone. Your studio today can actually just sign up on the app and order Coca-Cola for your coffee shop, and it will be delivered. But the average person is the owner of a tuck shop or a shebeen. And I make the distinction because one is more beverage focused. They buy soft drinks and beer. And the tuck shops are buying sugar, pasta, snacks, knickknacks, the whole yard. So I think you would think of the very small merchant, the survival merchant really, who's opening a little shop, a tuck shop outside her house. It's usually a woman, more responsible with money and with ordering. So we see all types of people joining the platform, but the ones that stay longer, that really become sustainable customers, are women who have children, who are running a small business to sustain their families.
Okay. And where do you store the goods? Where does Jabu store the goods to be able to get them to the customer?
When we started, I would put them all in my office. I used to have a construction office, and we would put the goods in the front. Long story, like now, 4 years later, we have distribution centers all over the country.
Okay.
So in Windhoek, we have 2 distribution centers, in Walvis Bay in Swakopmund, in Oshakati, Ondangwa, Ngwediva, and Rundu, and these are places where we employ people. And I think oftentimes we talk about how much we're doing for the community with the community, but we're also employing a lot of people, and I think a lot of it goes into these operations.
Yeah. And where do you source the goods?
Direct from the manufacturers and the brands. So when we first started, I would go to a supermarket, load my truck up with stuff, go to the shops and say, do you want this? The business really wasn't on the buying and selling. I was trying to discover, is there a demand for somebody getting you things on demand right now? So we now have partnerships directly with big brands. You can think of many, but Bocomo, for example, is a brand that we've partnered with extensively to actually expand our business from the informal sector to town. We now deliver all of the products to forecourts. Forecourts are the little markets in the petrol station. So you'll start now seeing Jabu trucks in towns going directly to the forecourts, delivering all types of products.
Oh, wow. What would be the biggest incentive for, let's say, a kuka shop owner to source their goods from Jabu as opposed to where they would source them previously? Where would they have done that? As in, what player is Jabu replacing in that delivery and supply chain process?
We're killing like stagnation. I think we really are making things more efficient. Normally, a player like this, we have different stakeholders. Our main stakeholders are customer, the person using our app to order. Normally, this person would have to leave their tuck shop, maybe find daycare for their children if they were taking care of them at the same time, and spend 3 to 4 hours running around town buying at retail prices products in taxis and coming back to their shop again in taxi. Most people don't have a car. They would have to take a shared taxi. And this was so apparent during the pandemic because taxis were shut down. You couldn't share taxis. And people found themselves not even able to source. So we're not necessarily replacing the taxis. I think people still will go to town to look at what products are being offered and what are being sold. We're going to the customer that just ran out of soft drinks and wants to order more from us, just ran out of juice, pasta, sugar, and says, I need this right now. I'm counting on you as a company to come. So I think we're replacing that hours of going around looking for it and the cost associated with transportation.
Part of the reason that Jabu has had, I think, what I would refer to as a meteoric rise in terms of visibility is just because all of these major, at least Namibian media outlets were writing about all the funding that Jabu was receiving. So that includes $15 million US 2 months after receiving $3.2 million in funding in seed from different rounds. And the point is really just a lot of this funding inspires sort of immeasurable amounts of hopefulness in young entrepreneurs who are looking to get their businesses funded. And I'm wondering, what are some of the biggest lessons you've learned in sourcing funding, whether those are lessons on authenticity, whether those are more technical lessons, but just something that you wish you would have known when you were embarking on finding funding.
It's a long journey. It's interesting you mentioned that we raised 15 after 2. That's how the media portrays it, because that's when they found out. But if I share with you how the journey has been, you will see that it's a bit more separated than those 2 months. It's been a lot different. So I started Jabu in 2020. And I approached my brother Sam, who runs Atenu, it's a construction business. And I said, I'm all into this idea. I can't find funding anywhere. But would you let me start getting a loan from the construction company? Now, this is very irresponsible if your idea doesn't work. But because we are brothers and we own the business together, it's a conversation you can have with people. And pretty much took the company bankrupt. Like, I used all of the money in the construction business in a time when we were not building, because the pandemic had hit, to actually buy trucks, start renting warehouses, hire people, buy products, and actually put my idea to work. So I think the first thing some of the investors must have seen is these guys are putting their money where their mouth is. Most people expect to start a business with external funding. We were fortunate that we'd been in a position of building for 6 years, and we had a pool of funds we could take from. So I think the first real round of funding came from our pocket. Then we started working really hard. I think it's about execution. A lot of people are working on ideas that are amazing and probably do deserve funding. But because they haven't started executing on the idea, a lot of people are afraid to put money towards it. I can tell you, I must have had about 400 phone calls to raise funds. The first 100, I wasn't executing yet. I was just pitching my idea. And I can tell you that maybe some of those people would have been great investors of ours, but they were right not to invest in us. I didn't have enough experience. We didn't have enough traction. We didn't have a team working on the right things. And I didn't have enough anecdotes and stories to answer the questions they were asking me. And I think being able to raise capital 400 phone calls later, which is approximately how many people I must have reached out to, so it involves a lot of networking, is not a testament of I got lucky or oh, I learned how to pitch it. It's a testament of that's how long it took also in operational time for us to get better and ready. I used to sit in a room and tell someone what we were doing. And they would ask me questions I had no idea how to answer.
Questions like what?
Questions like, what happens with the money when it comes back from a shipment? Well, I don't know, we put it in a bag and we're counting. Like, this doesn't give you a lot of assurance. I would leave that call and say, I need to go figure out what happens with the money when it comes on a shipment. So we were building a business, and I think once people see that you really are building something serious, that you're putting your heart and soul into it, that you are not going to give up, that you're not going to negotiate on the things you think are pillars of your values. Because a lot of people are like, I'll invest in you if you start lending to the shops. Here we are 4 years later. I'm not lending to any shop. And I actually took about 50,000 Namibian dollars of our money at some point, and I lent it to shops, and we burned most of it. So I realized I was trying some of the ideas people were telling me to see if I would go back to them for fundraising. But in the end, I said, let's focus on what we're building. We only raised money in 2021 in April for the first time. So the 3 million that you see in the newspapers in February 2022 was actually raised in April.
Oh, wow.
And I think of the previous year. And I think it's a lesson on humility that we decided to stick by.
Yeah.
You know, we raised $3.2 million. We got into Y Combinator, which is an accelerator. It's the first time a Namibian company got into this. And all of us knew in the company that we raised money. And we made a pact with 80 people that no one will talk about this until we're ready to go public. And it was really hard because you kind of want...
Go public as a company or go public with the news?
No, go public with the news, sorry.
Okay,
Yeah, sorry. Go public with like, hey, we've raised capital. Hey, we got into Y Combinator. We never told anyone. I mean, told our parents, our friends, the people we were hiring. But we actually sat down and said, what is the benefit of announcing we've raised capital? Will it benefit our... We asked 3 questions. Will it benefit our customers? Will they buy more from us? And the truth was no. Will it benefit our suppliers? Well, we can just tell them straight. We can sit with them and say, hey, we've raised capital. And will it benefit in our hiring? And we thought, right now we have the right team to go execute and to prove to the current investors that we've raised money from that we can do something with this. And we decided not to go public with the news because it would distract from the answer of these 3 questions. And I think it was like a silver bullet. This is real strategy. It was a silver bullet that we used when we wanted to go raise capital again, that we went public with the news. And I had started about 10 conversations right before pushing out that news on needing capital for our next round. And they were all warm and they were moving. The minute that article came out, those 10 conversations went fast track.
Wow.
I got emails that morning from 8 of them saying, wait, you raised capital? And my answer was, no, that's from last time. They're only catching on now, but we're about to finish our next round. And that's how we really got people to move it. So we used it as a strategy for fundraising later on. I got mentorship from people on how to think about this. But I can tell you, it was a hard journey to keep it to ourselves because you're working so hard. You kind of want to announce, hey, we've raised capital. We've done it. We've accomplished this goal. And we kept it to ourselves more than 10 months.
Wow. And I'm really glad because you keep bringing up sort of the team. Do you have the right team? And I really had to sit down with Luima and he had to explain to me exactly how Jabu works so that I can also go about thinking about even this conversation that we're having. And I'm wondering, how do you go about selecting the right team? Do you have a philosophy? How do you find the team? What's your mantra?
Yeah, I think we have a strategy, but not an answer. If anyone has an answer to that, they would just never hire again because you would find the right team at the get-go. We have rotation. I think a lot of the people who started with us are still there. Luimar is a perfect example of somebody who's part of our team since the very beginning, but that has changed roles many times. Mm-hmm. And it's not necessarily because he wasn't right for a role, but because new roles are needed. And as we grow into new cities, as we develop Jabu Connect, the Jabu Wallet, the Jabu Marketplace, there's so much going on. So the answer to your question changes every month. What was the right team for us when we were raising capital the first time versus what is it today? It's very different. When we first started, we had no software people in our team. Today, we have more than 45 people. We have an office in Spain, an office in Argentina, from different skill sets we haven't found locally that we are able to find in those places at a good price. And it will take time to also figure out how to build the next team. Right now, we're in a transition from us owning warehouses only and distributing to trying to find wholesalers who want to join our e-commerce. This is like saying, can we go to companies like Game, like Metro, like Cash and Carry, like Spar, and say, would you like to be part of our app? Would you like people to be able to click on your logo, go into your shop, order from us, and let Jabu collect your payments and do the deliveries for you? Mm-hmm. So does that require the same team that we have had until now to build warehouses and distribution centers? Probably not. So it doesn't mean we will let go of those people, but it means we need to think of how do we find innovative people in the new spaces we're venturing into.
Okay. Awesome. And I'm also very curious about your personal background. So you've worked in global energy markets, you've worked in business development at some of the biggest companies in the world. And are you done with your master's at UCT? Or are you still doing that?
I never finished it. I did all the coursework and then I started Jabu and I never submitted my thesis.
Oh.
So I finished the master's. I just never got the diploma.
Oh, interesting. Okay, but nonetheless, I'm curious about whether there's anything from your educational experiences that you now apply directly to your entrepreneurial pursuits.
Yeah, 100%. I'll give you a bit of background. I was born in Venezuela.
Yeah.
My mom is Moroccan and my dad's Spanish, so I've always felt like a citizen of the world. My brothers and I grew up in Venezuela, which it was, I would say is still in many ways, but it was an amazing country to grow up in. But insecurity hit. We were kidnapped growing up and we moved to the United States as young children. And it changed my perspective completely. I went from a very comfortable lifestyle, I went to a private school, to now moving to a country that language was my second language. I was an immigrant. I was trying to figure out, what this country has to offer. And the U.S. was a really great place to dream big. I can tell you that. You are encouraged from an early age. And I took one class from a university professor when I was 14. When you were in high school in the U.S., you could take university classes, and if you went to a public high school, the government had to pay for your university classes.
Okay.
So I was like, oh, that's cool, free university.
Yeah.
So I took a class, I was 14, from a guy called Bertin Quadio. Mm-hmm. He had just moved from the Ivory Coast to Miami. And he's an African professor, but he didn't phrase Africa as a place where you give charity, as many people think in the Western world Africa is spoken about. He spoke about the entire continent as an amazing place for opportunity, for growth, for development. And I walked out of that place and I told my parents, we messed up. We moved to Miami. We should have moved to the Ivory Coast. And my parents were like, what are you talking about? No one speaks Spanish there. We don't have friends. We don't have family. I said, no, the future is there. And I think since that age, I've been telling my parents I'm going to study and move to that continent. I don't know where, what, why, but I'll figure it out. And I went to University of Chicago. I worked at Google while I was at the university. And then I met someone really interesting who told me...
Oh, you worked at Google while studying?
Yeah, I had a job at Google when I was 19.
Wow.
It was crazy. I was getting a salary. I was going to the office with 30-year-olds.
That's crazy. Were you a full-time student at U Chicago?
I was a full-time student.
Wow.
Well, I had to move offices. I started in California. I had to move offices back to Chicago so that I could go
And what?
to that office.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it was very cool.
Yeah, it
and
sounds very cool.
it really changed my life. And yeah, how I got that job was completely crazy. I got an email saying, would you like to go to a coffee chat with Google? And this is for like those people who let opportunities pass. Just go for everything that's in front of you. I replied, yeah, coffee chat. And I thought, this is cool. I get to chat with Google. Now, I didn't know that coffee chat means interview in university speak. For me, that meant I'm going to meet people from Google.
Yeah.
And at the time, I used to make websites. Since a very young age, I used to make websites and do advertising on Google. And I walked into this group interview, and the lady asked me questions about what I did last summer. I said, no, I just graduated high school. She said, what are you doing here? I said, I'm here for the coffee chat. I said, no, this is people graduating university applying for jobs. And then she asked me a few questions, realized I knew a lot about Google, and then said, like, would you mind talking to me later? Like, this is very unique. And she just got me a job in the company.
Wow.
It was quite random.
Okay.
But anyway, back to the story is that somebody told me that if I really had this entrepreneurial dream to come one day to this continent and do something specific, I needed to first learn how money works before I needed to figure out what I wanted to do.
Okay.
And
why is that?
I took that to heart. I asked, what do you mean?
Yeah.
He says, well, if you want to be an entrepreneur but you don't know how money works, you'll lose along the path.
Yeah.
You won't know how to raise the capital, how to manage the capital, how to really speak in that, and you'll walk into banks and to rooms and not be able to speak. It's the first time someone gave me real advice that said, you need to do this. Most people tell you, here's A, here's B, you decide. And I quit Google. I hustled to get a job at Credit Suisse. I was very bad in accounting. I didn't have any background in accounting. You need to have accounting background to work in a bank.
Okay.
At this level, I was working in mergers and acquisitions.
Yeah.
And it was very interesting. I went to a conference where the CEO of the bank was speaking, and I gave him a letter saying I wanted a job at the bank.
Okay.
And the guy called me back and gave me a job. I didn't get interviewed on accounting. I like skipped all the technical stages of it.
Okay. But weren't you studying economics at U Chicago?
Yeah, but economics and accounting is
completely
like
different.
Yeah, economics is like how the world works, how we think about equilibrium. You
Yeah.
really understand the economy, but accounting is like the financials of a company's books.
Yeah.
And this was it. I got this job. I spent 4 years at Credit Suisse, and every single one of my vacations, I traveled to the African continent. I went to Nigeria when I was 21. I went to Angola, to Ethiopia, and I would take 10 days off. I would meet a lawyer, an accountant, ride as many taxis as I could, and have 1,000 conversations.
Yeah. And so how did your journey lead you to Namibia?
I told my boss I was moving to Nigeria,
Okay.
and he was like, whoa, how are you moving to Nigeria? And I said I wanted to start a bank in Nigeria. He says, listen, you're 22, 23 years old. You still should spend some time here. And they offered me a job to move to Chile.
Okay.
So Nigeria now was far, and instead of flying to Nigeria, I took a flight to South Africa and connected to Namibia.
Okay.
And I wanted to explore the country. I said, let me just go check this place out. When I landed here in 2014, the amount of newspaper content about housing demand opened my eyes to an opportunity at the time that I thought was very unique, which was if you were a civil servant and you needed a home, the government would actually subsidize your mortgage payments. And this is a fact still today for anyone looking to this. And I just thought, this is great. I'll start a mortgage company, and I'll help any teacher, nurse, police officer to get a home. So I went back to that guy who told me that I needed to learn how money works.
Was the CEO of the bank?
No, it was a random,
random person.
A random
Okay.
person. I said, hey, I have an idea, and I've been learning how money works. And I raised $1 million from him, US. I was 24, and I moved to Namibia to give mortgages, which I completely failed at. I didn't realize that in order to give mortgages, there needs to be houses available for people to buy, which, as you very well know, it's not everywhere in the country.
Yeah.
Right? So I ended up moving to Grootfontein with that money I raised,
Okay.
and I started building houses. I said, all right, let me just go figure this out. So I built 3 houses, then 17, then 30, then a school, then a clinic, and I've built, I think, in probably every region of this country, and I've camped out in the Kunene region to the Kavango regions, just making sure projects get done.
Oh,
And that's
wow.
been my journey.
As we wrap up our conversation, I'm curious, what is next for Jabu and what's next for you as an entrepreneur?
Well, for me as an entrepreneur is to continue building Jabu and to continue finding people who want to be part of our journey. I think our expansion plans are both product-based and geographical. We've moved to Zambia, we've moved to South Africa. My life's a bit chaos. I'm like always on a plane between Windhoek, Joburg, Lusaka, and I'm not as hands-on on one specific thing as I wish I could be. So I think as an entrepreneur, I would love to find more time for myself to be in the business rather than everywhere at once. And And I think for Jabu is about making sure our 3 products are aligned with the market.
And that's Jabu Connect.
Jabu Connect and Jabu Wallet. One is for making sure that anyone who's a store owner that wants to deliver can also use what we've built. Jabu Wallet is for anyone who wants to digitize their money and pay no fees. We don't have any fees.
Yeah.
The whole point is it's almost like you could bank with us, but we're not a bank. We're just a wallet that you could digitize your money into and earn money. And the main one, which is our marketplace, is make sure that other merchants who are seeing what we're doing can join this digital revolution of distribution by being in the e-commerce platform.
Awesome. And then just in 30 seconds quickly, what is one thing that you wish somebody had told you earlier, other than learn how money works?
Yeah, there's so many things, but I think I discover them as I go. I think to always have conviction. I think it's something I've learned with the years, that what you're working on is going to work out. And if it doesn't, you'll figure out something else that will work out. That's kind of our journeys.
Yeah.
And I think it's always reassuring to know that from the beginning, but the excitement of the journey is not to know it and discover it. And I think another thing would definitely be that people matter. Who you hire, and how you onboard them, and how you bring them into your vision and mission. I think there's a lot of great people we could have brought in earlier, and we didn't know, we didn't take the risks, we didn't take the chances. It's something I learned even in construction. I thought I could do everything myself. And then we started hiring an architect and an engineer, and then wow, this thing works without me. So I think people are the most important part of an organization, and the right people are what makes it a great organization.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much, David.
Yeah. My pleasure.
That brings us to the end of our conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, that was David Akinin right here on Spotlight by Bertha Tobias, where we tell the honest stories of the bravest dreamers and doers of our time here on the African continent. Thank you so much for watching.